Carl Gustav Jung, born in 1875. With Freud, one of the founding fathers of modern psychology. Still working at 84, he is the most honored living psychiatrist, and history will record him as one of the greatest physicians of all time.
Professor Jung, how many years have you lived in this lovely house by the lake at Zurich?
It's just about 50 years.
Do you live here now just with your secretaries and your English housekeeper?
Yes.
No children or grandchildren with you?
Oh, those that don't live here, but I have plenty of them in the surroundings.
Do they come to see you often?
Oh, yes.
How many grandchildren have you?
Oh, 19.
And great-grandchildren?
I think 8, and I suppose one is on the way.
And do you enjoy having them?
Well, of course it's nice to feel such a living crowd around oneself.
Are they afraid of you, do you think?
I don't think so. If you would know my grandchildren, you wouldn't think so.
What?
They steal my things. Even my hat that belongs to me, they stole the other day.
Now, can I take you back to your own childhood? Do you remember the occasion when you first felt consciousness of your own individual self?
That was in my 11th year. There I suddenly, on my way to school, I stepped out of a mist. It was just as if I had been in a mist, walking in a mist, and I stepped out of it and I knew I am what I am. And then I thought, but what have I been before? And then I found that I had been in a mist, not knowing to differentiate myself from things. I was just one thing among many things.
Now, was that associated with any particular episode in your life, or was it just a normal function of adolescence?
Well, that's difficult to say. As far as I can remember, nothing had happened before that would explain this sudden coming to consciousness.
You hadn't, for instance, been quarreling with your parents or anything?
No.
What memories have you of your parents? Were they strict and old-fashioned in the way they brought you up?
Oh, well, you know, they belonged to the later parts of the Middle Ages. And my father was parson in the country, and you can imagine what people were then, you know, in the 70s of the past century. They had the convictions in which people have lived since 1,800 years.
How did he try to impress these convictions on you? Did he punish you, for instance?
Oh, no, not at all. No, he was very liberal, and he was most tolerant, most understanding.
Which did you get on with more intimately, your father or your mother?
That's difficult to say. Of course, one is always more intimate with the mother. But when it comes to the personal feeling, I had a better relation to my father, who was predictable, than with my mother, who was, to me, a very problematical something.
So, at any rate, fear was not an element in your relation with your father.
Not at all.
Did you accept him as being infallible in his judgments?
Oh no, I knew he was very fallible.
How old were you when you knew that?
Let me see. Perhaps 11 or 12 years old. It was hanging together with the fact that I knew I was. And from then on, I saw that my father is different.
Yes. So the moment of self-revelation was closely connected with realizing the fallibility of your parents.
Yes, one could say so.
Now, what about...
I realized that I had fear of my mother, but not during the day. There she was quite known to me and predictable, but in the night, I had fear of my mother.
And can you remember why? Can you remember what that...
I have not the slightest idea why.
What about your school days now? Were you happy at school as a schoolboy?
In the beginning, I was very happy to have companions, you know, because before I had been very lonely. We lived in the country, and I had no brother and no sister. My sister was born very much later, when I was 9 years old. And so I was used to be alone, but I missed it. I missed company. And in school, it was wonderful to have company. But soon, you know, in a country school, naturally, I was far ahead. And then I began to be bored.
What sort of religious upbringing did your father give you?
Oh, we were Swiss Reformed.
And did he make you attend church regularly?
Oh, well, that was quite natural.
Yes.
Everybody went to church on Sunday.
And did you believe in God?
Oh, yes.
Do you now believe in God?
Now, difficult to answer. I know. I don't need to believe. I know.
Well, now, turning to the next staging point in your life, what made you decide to become a doctor?
That was in the first place a merely opportunistic choice. Originally, I wanted to be an archaeologist, Assyriology, Egyptology, or something of the sort. I hadn't the money. The study was too expensive. So my second love then belonged to nature, particularly zoology. And when I began my studies, I inscribed in the so-called philosophical faculty 2, that means natural sciences. But then I soon saw that it was the career that was before me would make a schoolmaster of me. I never thought I had any chance to get any further because we had no money at all. And then I saw that didn't suit my expectations. You know, I didn't want to become a schoolmaster. Teaching was not just what I was looking for. And so I remember that my grandfather has been a doctor, and I knew that when I was studying medicine, I had a chance to study natural science and to become a doctor. And a doctor can develop. You see, he can have a practice. He can choose his scientific interests more or less. At all events, I would have more chance than being a schoolmaster. Also, the idea of doing something useful with human beings appealed to me.
And did you, when you decided to become a doctor, have difficulty in getting the training at school and in passing the exams?
I particularly had a difficulty with certain teachers that didn't believe that I could write a decent thesis. I remember one case where the teacher had the custom to the habit to discuss the papers written by the pupils. And he took the best first. And he went through the whole number of the pupils, and I didn't appear, and I was badly troubled over it. And I thought, well, it is impossible that, but this can't be that bad. And when he had finished, he said, there is still one paper left over, and that is the one by Jung. That would be by far the best paper if it hadn't been copied. He has just copied it somewhere, stolen. You are a thief, Jung. And if I knew where you have stolen it, I would fling you out of school. And I got mad, and I said, this is the one thesis where I have worked the most, because the theme was interesting, in contradistinction, to other themes which are not at all interesting to me. And then he said, you are a liar, and if you can prove that you have stolen that thing somewhere, then you get out of school. Now that was a very serious thing to me, because what else then, you see? And I hated that fellow, and that was the only man I could have killed, If I had met him once at a dark corner, I would have shown him something of what I could do.
Did you often have violent thoughts about people when you were young?
No, not exactly. Only when I got mad. Well, then I beat them up.
And did you often get mad?
Not so often, but then for good.
You were very strong and big, I imagine.
Yes, I was pretty strong. And reared in the country with those peasant boys, it was a rough kind of life. I would have been capable of violence, I know. I was a bit afraid of it. So I rather tried to avoid critical situations because I didn't trust myself. Once I was attacked by about 7 boys, and I got mad. And I took one and just swung him around with his legs, and beat down 4 of them. And then they were satisfied.
And were there any consequences from that after?
Oh, I should say yes. From then on, I was always suspected that I was at the bottom of every trouble. I was not, but they were afraid, and I was never attacked again.
Well, now, when the time came that you qualified as a doctor, what made you decide to specialize in being an alienist?
Yeah, that is rather an interesting point. When I had finished my studies practically, and when I didn't know what I really wanted to do, I had a big chance to follow one of my professors. He was called to a new position in Munich, and he wanted me as his assistant. But then, in that moment, I studied for my final examination. I came across the textbook, a textbook of psychiatry. Up to then, I thought nothing about it, because our professor then wasn't particularly interesting. And I only read the introduction to that book, where certain things were said about psychosis as a maladjustment of personality. That hit the nail on the head. In that moment, I saw I must become an alienist. My heart was thumping wildly in that moment. And when I told my professor I wouldn't follow him, I would study psychiatry, he couldn't understand it. No, my friends, because in those days psychiatry was nothing at all. But I saw the one great chance to unite certain contrasting things in myself, namely, beside medicine, beside natural science, I always had studied history of philosophy and such subjects. It was just as if suddenly two streams were joining.
And how long was it after you took that decision that you first came in contact with Freud?
Oh, you know, that was at the end of my studies, and then it took quite a while until I met Freud. You see, I finished my studies in 1900, and I met Freud only very much later. I read, in 1900, I already read his dream interpretation and the Breuer Freud studies about hysteria. But that was merely literary, you know. And then in 1907, I became acquainted with him personally.
Will you tell me how that happened? Did you go to Vienna?
Oh, well, I'd written a book about the psychology of dementia precox, as one called schizophrenia then. And I sent him that book, and thus became acquainted. I went to Vienna for a fortnight then, and then we had very long and penetrating conversations, and that settled it.
And this long and penetrating conversation was followed by personal friendship.
Oh yes, it soon developed into a personal friendship.
And what sort of man was Freud?
Well, he was a complicated nature, you know. I liked him very much, but I soon discovered that when he had thought something, then it was settled, while I was doubting all along the line. And it was impossible to discuss something really affront. You know, he had no philosophical education, particularly, you see, I was studying Kant, and I was steeped in it, and that was far from Freud. So from the very beginning, there was a discrepancy.
Did you in fact grow apart later, partly because of a difference in temperamental approach to experiment and proof and so on?
Well, of course, there is always a temperamental difference. And his approach was naturally different from mine because his personality was different from mine. That led me into my later investigation of psychological types. There are definite attitudes. Some people are doing it in this way and other people are doing it in another typical way. And there were such differences between myself and Freud too.
Do you consider that Freud's standard of proof and experimentation was less high than your own?
Well, you see, that is an evaluation I'm not competent of. I am not my own history or my historiographer. With reference to certain results, I think my method has its merits.